I knew this would happen. It was a thought that took over my head the moment I watched my little world, my family, the Renero, fall. Renero Castle, where I lived, was falling apart. I didn't even have to look outside to find out. The fact that in less than an hour, there will be no more living things left here. The gate was broken and the walls were torn down by the invaders. There was no more safe place now. My father had already been killed. The same goes for my siblings. It would have been no different for the servants in the castle. Because those people are also the people from the Renero family. In the end, all I could do was hide in the safest place I could think of. It was in my small room, which they called the disgrace of the family, where no one remembers except for the occasional servants. Not long ago, the only heir to the Wolf family, Arson died. The heir, who had received the family's concerns due to his illness from birth, eventually ended his short life on the sickbed. The problem is that it turns out that Arson death was not due to a chronic disease, but a murder committed by someone else's scheme. The head of the eagle family, the head of the entire bird family. By my father. When I was 7 years old, a courtship letter arrived from the Yeckhart family. The sender was the head of the Wolf family, Kendrick Yeckhart. The content was simple. He wants to adopt a daughter from a bird family who has the strongest healing powers as his daughter-in-law. The intentions are clear. My father promised to send one of our direct line family members as a daughter-in-law. The problem is that the child sent by the father was the only mutation in our new family. You know what you're going to do, don't you? I remembered the day my father sent my half-sister, Shvil, to the Yeckhart family. It was common for all of Renero's children to be born with healing powers. But Shvil was a mutant. Shvil's ability is to steal an opponent's life force. So my father sent Shvil as Arson Yeckhart's bride. In order to absorb all of Arson Yeckhart's life force and eliminate the successor of the Wolf family. I couldn't help but be crazy. To kill the heir of the family was no different than turning the entire family into an enemy. Although the relationship between the bird family and the wolf family has been bad for a long time. It was an incomprehensible decision. The wolves, who lost their senses, moved to fulfill only one powerful desire. They showed up much faster and more brutally than expected for the revenge they would have desired even if they hadn't lost their reason. Look at the results. My father was strangled by the torn walls after the limbs were torn off. It would have been nice if it had ended there, but the furious wolves didn't know how to stop. The gates of the city collapsed and all the peaceful land of Renero was ruined. Renero, a prestigious family who had maintained the position of the head of the bird family for 600 years, was wiped out like that. The only direct line left now is me. The wolf clan noticed my presence and had been wandering around since before. Are all the children of the collateral line dead? Since black smoke was rising endlessly from the outside world, the collateral line must not have been able to escape the anger either. And I'll be the same if I'm caught. In fact, it was almost easy to live undetected yet. I've been able to survive undetected all this time because my room was so far away. I didn't know it would be so helpful to be treated as a disgrace by the family. Cough. My throat was hurting and I couldn't breathe. Only then did I notice that it was all a mess. A strong smoke from somewhere filled the large room in an instant. The same was true under the bed where I was hiding. Ugh, cough. My eyes were burning with black smoke, and tears flowed down my eyes. Since they could not find any survivors, it seemed that the mansion was set on fire so that I couldn't escape. The floor was hot and the air was heavy. In a sudden situation, the human form was loosened and the wings popped out. I folded my wings quickly. And I rolled myself more and more round. The house was being torn down by the fire. So, trapped in the flames, I slowly closed my eyes, breathing in the thick smoke to the fullest. I'm only 12 years old. I was the same age as the heir to the wolf family who died a week ago. Lady, wake up. A familiar voice shook me up. I didn't get up right away and tossed and turned. Lady Lindsay. Eventually, I opened my closed eyes slightly. And I checked the face of the person who was shaking me up. Adele? As soon as I saw her familiar face, I felt as if I had been hit with cold water. There's no way Adele is in front of me. She died about 2 years ago. Lady is having lunch with the head of the house today. Adele, you didn't forget, did you? But if it was like this was the room I lived in when I was very young. Before Adele was kicked out, before my hair turned red, this is the room I got when I was a daughter who was loved by my father. Am I back? I lowered my head and thought to myself. I guess he doesn't know yet. Kendrick Yeckhart is on his way to proposing a political marriage to the Bird family. If so, it meant that my father had not yet planned to send Shvil to kill Arson. It also meant that the opportunity to change the future was rolling in. I sat down on the sofa to organize my thoughts. Maybe it was a side effect of regression, or it was because I was young. I had to wrap my head a few times because my head didn't work well. First of all, my father doesn't know what Kendrick Yeckhart is up to. Even in my previous life, after the marriage proposal arrived, it took a month for Shvil to go to the Duke's house. My father pondered and eventually decided that he would kill Arson, and he had been planning to send Shvil for a long time. Thanks to him, my family collapsed, and I died. Since the head of the Wolf family proposed a political marriage, the Bird family had to marry the Wolf family. The Hampton River. A small river between the territory of the Bird family and the territory of the Wolf family. Although it was smaller than other rivers, the Wolf family and the Bird family have been fighting to take over the river for a long time because of its good location. So my father wouldn't refuse this marriage. The head of the Wolf family also needs a Bird family to save his son. And they also can't cancel an arranged marriage. If so, I'll go. I'm going to marry Arson instead of Shvil and treat him. I clenched my fists. Then, the Wolf family will not lose their mind or invade Renero. Furthermore, if I go to the territory of the Wolf family, I will be protected at least until I reach adulthood. Even if I had finished molting and had the cursed feathers, the Wolf family wouldn't let me go. Because I have to treat Arson. I fiddled with my hair. The fine, wheat-colored hair slid between my fingers. When the molting begins, they'll abandon me again. Like in my previous life, I will be locked up in a room where no one comes for the rest of my life. And I will absolutely refuse it for this life. I bit my lip and shook my head. I will marry him instead of Shvil, then heal his heir and ask protection in return. It's about getting a promise that they will not abandon me under any circumstances. You can't. Adele said firmly. She placed her hands on her waist and blocked the front of her door. I stamped my feet and looked up at Adele. Adele. Mrs. Bellin is walking around outside. You'll definitely get in trouble again if you go out now. She was determined. I said I would go to the garden for a while, but she wouldn't even allow it. Absolutely not, lady. Never. It seemed like she was determined never to let me go. Then plan B. I grabbed my stomach quickly and drooped my eyebrows. My stomach was rumbling. It was only natural because I hadn't eaten properly for breakfast and lunch. Mrs. Bellin said she would take care of it because she didn't feed us on time. And Adele was weak against my hunger. I grabbed my hungry stomach and turned my head to Adele. And after making the most miserable and pitiful expression, I said, Adele, I'm so hungry. I'll go out for a minute, okay? Didn't you say you wanted to go to the garden a while ago? But suddenly I'm hungry. I changed my words urgently, and Adele looked at me suspiciously. Silence passed for a moment. She quickly sighed and grabbed my shoulder. Then I'll bring you some cookies, so you can never leave, okay? Mrs. Bellin's out there. Don't even open the door. Yes, I will. I'll be back soon, so don't go out. All right. Adele sighed and left the room. I ran to the back bed and slipped my hand under the bed. Anne. I found it. I pulled out a small note from under the bed and held it in my hand. This was a note I wrote in advance last night when I asked Adele to bring me some paper and a pen. It would be great if we could meet without me transforming into a beast. Therefore, it was safer to make a note in advance in case we couldn't communicate. I opened the note. My name is Lindsay Renero. Please take me to Yeckhart. I double-checked the note and folded it up on the window frame. Sliding. I opened the window quickly, and the hot wind blew into the room. I have to hurry before Adele comes. I bit my lips and ran a couple of times in place, and white smoke rose from under my feet. Please, please. I leave myself to the smoke. I could feel small wings sticking out from behind my back and raising my gaze. Done. I succeeded in transforming. In fact, it was half a gamble. You could usually learn how to transform from the age of 10 or older. In my previous life, too, I only learned how to transform at the age of 10. However, I had past experience with transforming, so I only tried it once, but I naturally succeeded in transforming since I knew I could do it from the start. I looked into my wings and tail. It was a clean wheat color since it hadn't yet molted. I quickly climbed onto the window frame. I could hear whispers outside the door to see if Adele was already coming back. Then I saw Kendrick Yeckhart walking across the garden. No. As soon as the door burst open, I bit a note in my mouth. Then, Adele came into the room. Lady? Where are? Adele looked around the empty room as if bewildered. Soon, her gaze came to my body, which had been transformed into a beast. Adele opened her eyes wide when she found me. Ack, lady? Clank. Then there was the sound of the dish breaking. Adele seemed to have missed the plate, surprised by the lady's beast transformation. The cookies that were on the plate fell to the floor. Lady. But I didn't look back and jumped out of the window frame. Chirp. The problem was that it was my first time flying with this body. Wings with undergrown flight feathers kept leaning to one side. In addition, the note in my mouth kept slipping, so I had to make an effort not to miss them. I squeezed my power and flew away to catch up with Kendrick Yeckhart. And when I finally flew close to Kendrick Yeckhart. Do I succeed, do I? Chirp. My wings weakened, and I fell to the top of Kendrick Yeckhart. Kendrick Yeckhart stood tall in his position. He put his hands under his chin and shook his head lightly. Chirp. It didn't take long for it to roll from the top of the head and fall into Kendrick Yeckhart's hands. Ack. I slowly lifted my head and looked up at Kendrick with a stinging gaze. His close-up expression was quite mysterious. He raised his eyebrows. After that, he looked at me for a long time as if he was trying to figure out what was going on. Chirp. Chirp. Fortunately, Kendrick seems to know what my gesture means. Were you playing alone in the garden? He looked around the garden and carefully put me down on the grass. Chirp. No. I was desperate to see his back as he left. Just how did I get here? I couldn't fail like this. I must follow the wolf family no matter what. Kendrick turned his gaze to me. He seemed to be asking, why didn't you go and come back? I held out a note to Kendrick with a triumphant look. A note? Kendrick reached out with a big hand. I spat a note on Kendrick's palm. He saw the bad handwriting. Lindsay. Renero? Chirp. Take you to Yeckhart? Chirp. I nodded my head up and down. I nodded so vigorously that all the goals rang, but it didn't matter. I folded my wings in agitation and repeated them. What if he says he won't take me? Of course, I thought that was impossible, but I became impatient as the silence grew longer. Let me prove my ability. Then Kendrick might end his troubles and take me. I flew near his wrist and landed on his hand. Then I bit Kendrick's finger as hard as I could. He frowned slightly. A drop of blood flowed from Kendrick Yeckhart's finger. Chirp. Take a good look, mister. I used this skill quickly. The skin, which was torn very slightly, healed quickly thanks to this ability. Then I held out my chest in high spirits and looked at him. Chirp. What do you think? Did you see it well? So take me with you. I quickly dug into Kendrick's arms, looked up at him, and blinked. Then he turned and looked at the noisy Renero family mansion. Perhaps because I disappeared, all the servants were coming out to the garden one by one. Chirp. Hurry, hurry, take me. Kendrick lowered his head and made eye contact with me. Then he raised the corners of his mouth and laughed. Why are you laughing? Kendrick unfolded his jacket collar with his hand to hide me and whispered lowly. Yeah, let's go together. Without even having time to think about anything else, he carelessly put me into his pocket. In an instant, it was dark around. Kendrick's body shook slightly as he began to walk. I took a seat in his pocket and thought, holding my breath. I succeeded. Now, I can hide like a mouse and follow him to the wolf's mansion, but there was a small problem. It's too dark in his pocket. Kendrick's pocket was so large and cozy that it was just right for me to fit in. However, being alone in a dark place, I kept thinking of that day. The smoke that was rising everywhere, the smell of blood on the nose. Even the wolves that were looking for me were wandering around the room. I should be hiding quietly. Otherwise, the servants of Renero might find out. The birds had very good eyesight, so if I stuck my head out, the people of Renero could find me. Eventually, I couldn't resist and stuck my head out of his pocket. As I stuck out my head, I could feel the cool wind brushing my hair. I opened my beak at the sight of the fancy carriage. I raised my head reflexively. My eyes met with a pair of blue eyes that looked interesting to me. A pair of blue eyes that looked at me with interest met my eyes. Chirp. Hello, mister, the weather is good. I didn't know before because I had to follow this person right now to survive. But this man in front of me was a wolf. A beast that can eat me in one bite. Hiccup. You're not gonna hurt me, right? It's not just a wolf, it's the head of the gray wolf family. In my previous life, he was the one who tore and killed my father and brothers and set the mansion on fire while losing his reason. It'll be okay, right? Because I need to heal Arson. However, my instinct screamed from the depths part of my body, telling me to leave this man as soon as possible. You want to fly? But this man doesn't seem to understand me very well. No. What are the wolf signs of surrender? I quickly rolled my brain. I couldn't think of it well because I had never learned it properly in my previous life. I think they lifted their legs when they loosened their guard. With one leg up, Kendrick Yeckhart raised his eyebrows. If you want to do your business, not on my lap. No. It's so frustrating, then, let's talk now. Chirp. It's safe here, so relax and turn into a human now. I shook my head with my wings drooping at Kendrick's words. Kendrick's eyes narrowed. Do you mean you don't want to transform back? No, that's not it. Chirp chirp. I jumped in place and shook my head. Then Kendrick opened his mouth as if he had realized something. You can't transform back? Yes. If you ever want to go back before then, I'll take you back anytime. So make yourself at home. I opened my beak wide when I heard Kendrick. And I climbed onto his shoulder. Then I held Kendrick's collar tightly on my feet and looked out the window. How long does it take to get to Yeckhart? Although I had never actually been there, Yeckhart and Renero were close. The wolf family and the bird family were not on good terms, partly because the two families lived close together. We've arrived. Kendrick Yeckhart slowly got out of the carriage as I looked out the window. Hold tight, so you don't fall off. He said so and stroked my head carefully with his index finger. I nodded my head bravely. Don't worry. After shaking my head to clear away the hazy energy and placing my feet on his shoulders, I caught sight of the huge Yeckhart mansion at a glance. Oh, my. It's huge. The people and the house are really big. Oh my. Even though I had only seen it from far, I was surprised by its size and majesty. I glanced around. There was a wolf rushing to eat me, it was then. Frightened by the unexpected appearance of a black beast in front of me after he told me to hold on to him tightly so that I wouldn't fall. What is that? It's a monster. It pointed its big snout at me carelessly. I felt the heavy breathing throughout my body. I'm going to die. I could feel the sharp teeth touching the tip of the wing. The monster's rough breath brushed my wings every time they trembled. Stop it, Dagon. It's rude. Then the black wolf took a step back, as if embarrassed. The wolf raised its heavy paws and shook its body wildly. After brushing its fur a few times, a puff of black smoke rose from beneath his feet, and a young knight appeared. What the hell is this? A knight named Dagon looked down at me with curious eyes. I picked it up in Renero. From those little chicks? Did they give up their child that easily? Dagon asked in disbelief. No, I just picked it up. Kendrick replied indifferently as if he had no intention of answering any further, then left Dagon behind and moved on to his steps. What do you mean, picked it up? You're noisy, Dagon. I took a deep breath, putting my head down in Kendrick Yeckhart's shoulder. I thought I was going to die. An old man with one-piece glasses stood upright at the front door of the Wolf Mansion. Seeing several other maids standing behind him, he seemed to be the butler of the Wolf Mansion. Master, you're back? The old butler looked at me and widened his eyes. Through the transparent one-piece glasses, I could see the inside of the wall that seemed to protrude. Master, what is this? Take care of her, Ethan, she doesn't seem to know how to lift the transformation. Wash and feed her. I think she's too skinny. Master, wait. No, hold on. The butler and I turned at the same time and looked at Kendrick. And soon, he looked as if he had made up his mind. He grabbed the other maid's shoulder and said, I have something to talk about with my master, so you can take care of him for a while. Huh? He quickly put me on the other maid's palm. Then he hurried after Kendrick, who was walking far away. I crept up my head and looked at the wolf maid's face. She grinned wickedly. The sharp fangs were exposed. Master, please talk for, just a moment. Ethan, who ran in a hurry, breathed in and said. Kendrick said this while standing in front of his office door. Come in and talk. Yes. Kendrick Yeckhard sat right in the middle of it and said with his hands together. So, Ethan, what do you have to say? Master. Isn't that baby bird Renero's daughter? Master, sneaking a child with parents is the same as kidnapping. If this fact is known, it will not escape criticism. Calm down and listen to me. Kendrick, who barely calmed Ethan, pulled a crumpled note from his pocket. It was the same note that Lindsay had brought in with her little beak earlier. Read it. Kendrick handed the note to Ethan. He quickly took over the note and quickly scanned the contents. Kendrick said calmly. You should have asked that first. If it's Renero's spy. She doesn't seem to be able to complete her transformation, so how do I ask? And, if I ask hastily and she runs away, will you take responsibility? Kendrick asked sharply. Let's admit it, Ethan. Even if she's a spy, it's good for us. He spoke slowly. First of all, Renero's daughter is in our hands. In any case, the wolves achieved their purpose. Ethan nodded his head in agreement. That's true, but take care of her for now. When the transformation is resolved, then we will talk again. Until then, take care of her as seriously as possible. So that she doesn't want to go back. Then I'll get going. I will report her condition once an hour. Kendrick beckoned. Ethan bowed his head and stepped out of Kendrick's office. The butler, who had rushed after Kendrick, returned with an expression on his face as if he had gone insane. But as soon as he stood in front of me, he smiled broadly. My name is Ethan. You're the Lady of Renero, right? Did the master bring you by force? The old butler whispered with a very serious expression. I will never tell him. He had a pretty grim attitude as if he was ready to hear anything. Force? Of course not. Rather, I beg him to allow me to follow him. Chirp. I shook my head, and the butler asked again with a suspicious look. He's really not? That's what I'm saying. Chirp. Then Ethan swept his chest as if he was relieved. That's a relief. I thought he was using force. I'll show you the room. Lady. I jumped over the old butler's wrinkled hands. The maids opened the door. Just then. Whoa. I had no choice but to open my mouth, no, my beak, and look into the room. Because it was too fancy for a guest room. Furniture that looks luxurious to anyone, even blankets that look super soft and pretty toys. It can only be seen as if they prepared it for someone. Ah. This is a room for his daughter-in-law. You can stay here from now on. Ethan smiled kindly and put me down on the bed. The part of my foot that touched it fell in. But the problem is. Isn't the bed too big? The problem was that the furniture was too big, and I was a very small bird. A small bird was left in a huge, spacious room. It was a funny picture. As if this was what worried the old butler, he also showed his displeasure. Don't go into the blanket recklessly, lady. It seems dangerous. The old butler said this as he looked back and forth between the thick blanket and my small body. I lifted a wing to show that I understood. And I cried with my wings drooping as if I had no energy. Chirp. I'm hungry. Then Ethan clapped his hands as if he understood. Are you hungry, lady? I positively flapped my wings. Then I'll prepare a meal. Rather than in the dining room, wouldn't it be more convenient to eat here? Is this heaven? Wow, this is the best. There was food that I had never tried before in Renero. Steam rose from the pink bath water. Light pink petals floated on the water, and the water smelled good. It's really nice. Wolves bathe in good water. I murmured with my eyes closed, soaking my beak in warm water. Chirp. The wolves faithfully carried out Kendrick's orders to wash and feed me. Thanks to this, I was able to have time to reflect on my future plans while immersed in warm water. First of all, I succeeded in getting to the wolf mansion. But I couldn't be sent back to Renero again unless I was married to Arson. That way, I won't be kicked out until I reach adulthood. Wolves only have one companion for the rest of their lives. So I can't ask for marriage, and I don't want to. But there's one exception. If I marry early, regardless of my intention as a child, I will be given the opportunity to divorce after coming of age legally. In other words, it means that I can be protected as a wolf's companion until I reach adulthood. So I had to get married. And they'll want me to marry him too. You worked hard to come a long way, are you tired? Wash up and get some rest. Then, I'll take care of your bed. The maid said affectionately. I nodded blankly. Then the maids carefully dried all my feathers and organized the bed. The maids alternated between a very thick blanket and a small body of mine, and finally, Lena and the two maids carefully looked after my bed. After removing the huge blanket and bringing me a soft and thin blanket, they carefully closed the white curtains. I sat on the bed and stared at them as they moved. But then, the lights in the room went black in an instant. I was startled and jumped up right away. They turned off the light. The ceiling lamp of the mansion was made of magic stone, and when one was turned off, it turned off all the other lamps. I was startled and hurriedly crawled out of bed. The maid seemed to be turning around. The sound of footsteps was getting farther away. This can't be. Then, as the door opened a little, light poured through the crack of the door. See, chirp. I ran to the maids crying without missing the chance. I didn't want to be alone in the dark. I feel like the strong smoke is squeezing my throat. It seemed as if a blazing fire was coming at any moment. It was the same as when I went into Kendrick's pocket. As soon as they turned off the light, my mind went blank, and I couldn't think of anything else. Only the thought of getting out of here. I felt my wings tremble. I quickly flew up and climbed onto the maid's shoulder just before they left. Oh my. Lady? The maid looked at me with round eyes in surprise. Lady, are you afraid of the dark place? Lena asked cautiously, as if worried. I nodded frantically without missing a moment. Oh my, I'll turn it on again. There was a rushing sound of someone running, and the light quickly turned on. I was able to calm down a little only then. I could still feel my heart beating fast. The maid sat me on a soft blanket and sat around me to check my condition. "Hey, Betty. Go and get me a glass of water." I'll be right back." Betty came back really quickly. She handed me a glass of water. I repeatedly took a sip and lifted my head. "I'm afraid of the dark. From now on, I'll ask first and then pull it off. Will you be okay then?" Nod. "Okay, if you're afraid of sleeping alone, we'll be by your side." I shook my head quickly. Because I'm afraid of the dark, not of being alone. Besides, I was so scared earlier that I forgot for a moment, but these maids in front of me were wolves. "Make sure to call me." The maids rushed out of the room. I was then able to close my eyes with peace of mind in a bright room. Kendrick found me the day after I got to the mansion. "Hello, baby." He affectionately called me out and held out his hand. I stretched out my wings and flew vigorously and landed in his hand without hesitation. "Do you like your room?" Kendrick asked quite nicely. Then Kendrick asked with a smile. "If it's okay with you, I'd like to introduce you to my son at dinner." "Arson? Will I finally get to see him?" He gently pushed open the huge door. It was a neat study. It was no different from my father's study in Renero. But strangely, Kendrick's study felt less like an office. Snacks and small wolf dolls scattered all over the place relieved the stiff feeling. "Is it Arson's doll?" I glanced at the pink stuffed wolf. It looked like it was a very good quality doll. "You will play here." Then he sat down at his wooden desk and started looking through the papers. Did I fall asleep? I opened my eyes slowly. Then, in a panic, I took a step back. Because a wolf was sitting right in front of my beak. "Hike, what is this?" I quickly flapped my wings and moved away from the wolf. I could feel the bird's chest rising and falling steeply. But the wolf didn't move. So I narrowed my eyes and looked at the wolf. I can see traces of sewing here and there if I look closely. Phew, it's the doll earlier. It was a wolf doll that Kendrick brought next to me to play with. I kicked the wolf doll out of embarrassment. The doll didn't budge. Did he go out? Since the office was empty, it seemed like I had fallen asleep, and he went out by himself. When I got up, I saw a note written in neat handwriting. "I'll be back soon." I think Kendrick Yeckhart had written it down for me when I woke up. There were also a lot of small desserts next to the memo. I barely picked up one macaron. And with a pointed beak, I pecked hard at the macaron. At that time, outside the window frame, wolves with bright yellow eyes were staring at me. As I trembled and crept into the handkerchief, I heard a buzzing sound from over the window frame. Then there was no more noise. The bright yellow eyes were right in front of me. Startled, I jumped off the sofa. Then I flew back and left the office as fast as I could. I have to run. My instinct was telling me to run away. I flew quickly across the hallway. Then I saw some of the servants following me. Look, they're trying to eat me. I ran out the window and sped up. I was drawn to Yeckhart's huge, open garden. I looked back and flew. Because the wolves kept chasing me. At that time. Ouch. I bumped into a boy and fell straight to the ground. My eyes were spinning around. Will I die like this? Just when I was thinking like that. Pong! White smoke rose like a cloud from beneath my feet. The transformation was released. Are you okay? When I asked the boy with a stutter, the boy raised his head. And the moment our eyes met, I could tell by instinct. Arson Yeckhart. This child is the only heir to the Yeckhart family, and he is the boy who my father killed in a previous life. I couldn't help but notice. Looking at his hair color, he looks like Kendrick Yeckhart. Gray hair, which represents the gray wolf family, and deep blue eyes, like the ocean. His whole body seemed to show that he was the gray wolf family's next heir. As I put out my hand, the boy started crying, grabbed my hand, and jumped up. What? The boy looked very confused. The boy was clearly confused because he had two round eyes and a mouth that wouldn't close. Well, I'd be embarrassed, too. Who wouldn't be embarrassed when an unknown girl suddenly appeared? At that moment, I noticed that the boy's palms had a lot of scratches on them. I think it was because we bumped into each other, and he fell and put his hand on the ground. I'm sorry. Please wait for a moment. I grabbed Arson's hand. And I used my ability. Then, both hands healed as if they had been washed. Arson was startled by the sight, and his eyes widened like that. You. What are you? You know. As soon as I was thinking about how to explain this. Oh my, lady. It looked like the old butler was running in a panic from afar. His clothes, which had always been neat, became disheveled. He looked at me in bewilderment, and when he saw Arson sitting down, he lifted Arson up with a pale face. By any chance, are you the lady? Ethan looked at me and asked cautiously. I nodded to Ethan's question. Oh, my God, you're finally back to your human form. My name is Lindsay Renero. The child said over and over again. The child looked shocked, but she didn't try to avoid looking at Kendrick Yeckhart. Actually, I overheard the conversation between Kendrick Nim with my father. The child politely placed both her hands on their knees and lifted her head. Conversation? Yes, that's why I asked you to take me. The child pointed at the note and said. Because I can help Kendrick Nim. Her bright green eyes stared unshakably at Kendrick Yeckhart. There is almost no trace of leaking out. You told our family that you are looking for a marriage partner for your son. That's right. Please allow me to marry Arson. I will treat Arson. You? Yes. Yes, please say it. What do you want in return for treatment? Because Arson, who was his only son and the only heir to the Grey Wolf family, was getting worse every day. The name of the disease is unknown to most people, but Kendrick and some of his acquaintances knew what it was called. Arson's illness was not an illness. That's a curse. In the northern part of the Wolf family, Yeckhart, there was a place where entry was forbidden for a long time. It's called the Cursed Land, Tamar. It was a land where life couldn't live because of the ancient curse. It is a terrible place where people lose their lives by a curse if they step in by mistake. Therefore, the Wolf family strictly prohibited and controlled Tamar's entry. The problem is that, for some reason, Tamar's curse was fully revealed to Arson. The curse of the land of Tamar. Black spots like ancient patterns appeared and repeatedly disappeared throughout Arson's body. He had seizures often, and he sometimes got fevers or couldn't breathe. The doctors gave up treatment. The condition is bad. The treatment is impossible, so it would be better to send him to a better place. Kendrick Yeckhart, who recalled the words of the Yeckhart family's doctor during his last treatment, shook his head. So the method he came up with was to put pressure on the hostile family, Renero. If Yeckhart's ability was stronger than any other race, Renero's ability was the opposite. Renero's ability is healing. He heard that there are no diseases that can't be cured by children of Renero's family and immediate descent, among them children with excellent abilities. Please don't throw me if I become ugly. What? If I become ugly later, please don't throw me away and protect me until I become an adult. Lindsay raised her head. She knew that she would have a hideous red feather when she later finished her first molt. Of course, she couldn't tell Kendrick Yeckhart the whole truth. However, it was better to keep this promise. In return for healing, I want the protection of the Wolf family. Please protect me under the name of the family. The little girl's voice rang out in the office. Kendrick Yeckhart's face was terribly distorted when he heard Lindsay. He couldn't believe what the child said. What do you mean you don't want to be abandoned? Even if she looks ugly, please don't throw her away. Although he doesn't know very much about the bird family, a 7-year-old child could not possibly make such a statement. Yes, I promise, Lindsay. I'll take care of you until you're an adult. She could hear a low voice. Lindsay looked up at Kendrick with her bright eyes. The child added cautiously. Promise me in the name of Yeckhart. Yeah, under the name of Yeckhart. He lowered his head and put his lips on the back of the child's small hand. Then, we can start the treatment today. It's enough for today. You haven't officially joined us yet. I opened my eyes and looked up at Kendrick. Is it okay to do it late? That's fine. Don't overdo it and adjust yourself first. After leaving these words, Kendrick left the office, saying he had urgent business. I was left alone in a huge office and blinked. And I did it. It was my first thought when Kendrick left the office. Of course, I couldn't speak appropriately in the middle, but this was good enough. I got a promise that I wouldn't be thrown away. So, even if I look ugly after molting, I don't have to worry about being abandoned. I was overjoyed about that fact. In addition, I recalled the touch of Uncle Kendrick kissing the back of my hand. It's a token of promise. The kiss on the back of the hand meant that the wolves had made a promise that would never be broken. I clasped my hands and smiled. Then, suddenly, Ethan came into the office, looked at me and smiled. Did you have a good conversation, lady? Ah, yes. He was kind. He listened to me well. Then, that's a relief. I came back to my room holding Ethan's hand. Hello, my name is Betty. Huh? This person? Yes, I was the maid who helped Lady take a bath on the first day. She said with a gentle smile. Wearing a neat navy blue maid outfit, Betty was an impressive maid with freckles on the back of her nose, brown hair, and blue eyes. It hardly smells like a wolf. It was strange. I looked up at Betty with round eyes, and she smiled as if she had read my mind. I grew up within a wolf clan, but I'm a hybrid of a wolf clan and a bird clan. Bird clan? Yes, my grandmother is from a bird clan, so I was born a hybrid with a little less wolf traits than the others. Betty smiled and explained calmly. I nodded and listened to the explanation, and Ethan made a big gesture and interrupted carefully. Betty is the only half-breed of the bird clan in the mansion. We thought it would be easy to take care of the lady, so the master ordered her to be your exclusive maid. Kendrick Yeckhart's careful thought gave me a warm feeling at the bottom of my heart. Please call me Betty comfortably. Lady, is there anything you want to do? Would you like me to read you a fairy tale? A fairy tale book? Oh, right. I was 7 years old. To Betty's eyes, I would look like a 7-year-old girl who falls asleep hugging many fairy tale books and dolls. Betty, can I see the mansion? It's my first time here. Yes, I will guide you, lady. Okay. I jumped in excitement. I turned my head to follow Betty's gestures. Then, through the wide-open glass door, I saw a green garden. It was hard to guess how wide the garden was and where the end was from a distance. As I said whoa, and admired it, I could feel the passing maids glancing at me. Betty noticed that I was nervous, so she gently touched my cheek and said, Lady, if you're tired, shall we go back? No, I want to see more. It was then I heard the sound of something breaking, and the screams of a young boy echoed through the hallway. I don't want to. When I asked, she thought for a moment and answered cautiously. The young master must be very sick. That room is his room. Shall we go back now? She grabbed my hand lightly. But I stood there and didn't move. That was Arson's voice? That's weird. He looked fine when we met in the garden earlier. I pulled Betty by the hand. I want to meet that boy, is it okay? Betty opened her eyes wide as if surprised by what I said. Her mouth was slightly open, and she seemed very surprised. Lady, it seems that the young master is not feeling well today. So now is the right time. Now. Right now. When Arson is ill and crying, she will show up nicely and heal him with her powers. Then it would be good to show what I'm good at. I got the confirmation that they wouldn't kick me out, but I'm still anxious because. In the meantime, a loud noise kept coming through the door. When she knocked lightly on the door, a maid with dark hair and a troubled face stuck her head out. "Betty? What's going on?" "I don't know what's going on, but I can't right now, the young master." "Chloe, the lady wants to meet the young master." The door opened, and I peeped through the crack in the door into the room. And at that moment, my eyes met Arson, who was flushed. "Hello?" I waved my hand slightly. Then Arson looked at me with round eyes. A bewildered light flashed across his face. Arson didn't seem to know that a new bird girl had arrived yet. "Well, it's only been a day since I came to the mansion, so it's natural." I approached Arson's bed. Arson seemed to agonize for a moment and soon pulled the blanket up to the tip of his head and hid. His face was red, as if he was very embarrassed. After thinking for a while, I grabbed Arson's small hand. Arson, who was so red he looked like he would burst, took out his hand quickly, so I missed it right away. "Don't grab me." Okay. I won't hold you." "Is it okay if I touch your arm instead?" "It's not okay." "Don't touch me, get out." "Oh, you're a tough guy." Arson put the blanket over his head again. I pulled Arson's blanket tight. His sweaty hair was stuck to his forehead. I looked into a bowl of medicine. The medicine looked very bitter because it was dark green and sticky. A 7-year-old child didn't want to eat it, which was normal. I grabbed Arson's hand. This time, I crossed my fingers to make it harder for him to take it off, then I told Arson. "You know, if you listen to me carefully, you might not take medicine." "Lie." "Really, I'm not lying." "What? That's it? If you listen carefully, you might be able to go out and play." Arson slowly lifted his head and looked once at the medicine pot and once at my face. "Really? All right, here we go." I closed my eyes slowly. A pleasant sound tickled my nose. After making sure that the warm wind went all the way around the body, I focused on the part where the hands met. Then I felt that my powers were slowly moving into Arson's hands. The methods of using healing abilities were slightly different. For example, my father was a way to heal by pouring out his powers all at once. Gale, who is Renero's successor and my half-brother, has the ability to make something solid and feed it. I've never had such a hard time treating a common disease. If I don't take my hand out like this, I strongly feel that it might suck my abilities and my life force away. But I have to treat it. I'm here to heal him. I might be sent back to Renero if I can't cure him. I really hate that. I forced myself to use this skill. As if to represent the unstable flow of magical powers, the green wind that circulated around Arson and my body quickly became rough. And at that moment, the familiar green smoke filled up from the tip of my toes. "Oh, no." Arson opened his eyes wide as if he didn't understand. The maids also felt something was wrong, so they hurried to separate Arson and me. But it was too late by the time the maids separated Arson and me. The wind that had engulfed the entire room soon disappeared. Only the green smoke filled up, and soon there was a small explosion. Then, "See, chirp." I turned into a little bird again. No way. How did I get back to human form? I jumped on the spot to return to being a human again, but it didn't work. I sat down and felt like crying. As I slumped down, Arson glanced at me. "Are you crying?" I glanced at Arson. "But you're really small." "Are the bird clans all this small?" "It's rude of you to say that, young master. But it's really small. It's as big as a rat." Arson was constantly admiring that I was small. It must have been amazing because it would be the first time to see a bird clan that was transformed. But still. "So you're a rude wolf." I glared at Arson. But Arson didn't care and poked me here and there. "Chirp. Don't touch me." I curled up and took a step away from Arson. The fluffy, wheat-colored hair swelled up to form a round ball. The man who opened the door was a man between his 40s and 50s, with an easygoing impression. He was wearing a white doctor's gown and had a heavy brown leather bag in his hand. It seemed that that man was the Mr. Hearn that Ethan was talking about. I tilted my head and looked at Mr. Hearn. It was because of the familiar smell coming from him who had just opened the door. This person. Are you a deer? I remembered that a deer clan had come to Renero's mansion the other day. The deer family had a distinctive scent of flowers that only grew in the territory of the deer family. In addition, the deer clan was a clan with advanced medicine and herbalism, and they lived in hiding on the island to avoid attacks from other clans who were aiming for that medicine and herbalism. Mr. Hearn looked at Arson, who was lying on the bed, first. Let's see the condition. As Ethan said, Mr. Hearn, who first looked at Arson's forehead, carefully examined every corner of Arson's mouth. In the meantime, as if trying to hear Arson's heartbeat, Mr. Hearn looked at him as if in doubt. It's strange. Is there any problem? Ethan, who was standing next to Arson, asked with a puzzled face. His condition has improved. All of a sudden the symptoms were relieved. The flow of abilities is also stable. That's a relief. I was greatly relieved to hear what Mr. Hearn said. It's like proving my usefulness. I didn't seem to be the only one relieved. Ethan's face turned bright. The old butler looked down at me with friendly eyes and said, "Maybe it's because the lady's ability." Ethan lifted me up carefully. I made eye contact with Mr. Hearn on Ethan's hand. The gentle reddish-brown eyes looked at me. This is the baby bird lady from Renero. I heard that she used her skill to treat the young master. Then the maid standing in the doorway nodded vigorously. That's right, I saw it. The young lady uses her ability, so this room is filled with green smoke. The maids chattered loudly about how great my ability was. Yes, she treated me. Arson, who was quietly keeping his mouth shut, also helped. He lifted me up, seemed to look everywhere, and immediately opened his mouth. He looked at every inch of my body. Can you lift your wings? I spread out my wings quickly and lifted them over my head at Mr. Hearn's words. Then, I heard the laughter of the maids around me. Mr. Hearn opened his mouth and furrowed his brow as if something was wrong. Certainly, the young master's condition has been greatly improved. With just one treatment, we can expect full recovery. Mr. Hearn's words brightened Ethan and the maids' faces. Full recovery? What do you mean full recovery? I also didn't know how good my ability was, so hearing these words from the deer clan made me very happy. But his words silenced the room for a moment. Until a while ago, all the people who were happy were waiting for words to follow, holding their breath. It can't be like this. She's only 7 years old. No matter how strong her abilities are, she's still immature. Mr. Hearn looked back at me. Her feathers are underdeveloped. She probably won't be able to fly properly. Besides, she hasn't even started molting for the first time, and I'm surprised that she's so young but she can use her ability. Chirp. The words drew the attention of everyone in the room to me. Mr. Hearn said as he pulled out well-packaged herbs and medicines from his leather bag. Besides, the flow of abilities is also unstable. Rather, she's in worse condition than young master. What is certain is that you shouldn't use this ability by overdoing it anymore. Chirp. If we measure the amount of this ability you used this time around 100, you'd better use about 20 of them. Even if you do that, it'll feel much better if you try to heal step by step. Mr. Hearn gently talked to me. His fingers smelled of herbs. I answered with a silent nod. While Renero's mansion was turned upside down, Lady Lindsay flew away. Adele, Lindsay's personal maid, was the one who brought the message. Adele ran straight to the room of Arthur Renero, the head of the Renero family, looking pale and tired. She told him that Lindsay was gone and tried to lay her face down. What do you mean by Lindsay flew away? Arthur Renero said with a frown. Lindsay was only 7 years old. What does it mean to fly away? Suddenly, she was transformed into a bird and flew out of the window. Adele frowned and looked into Arthur Renero's eyes. But when she hit the horn, thinking she would lose Lindsay, she opened her eyes wide at the unexpected answer. Arthur Renero was listening to Adele with interest. Did you say that she succeeded in transformation? Yes, I saw her flying with my own eyes. Arthur Renero didn't care that she flew away. He only asked again if he succeeded in the beast transformation. Lindsay is only 7 years old. If she really succeeded in transformation, she really has great talent. He smiled, admiring his daughter's talents. Lindsay was so smart and talented that it was too bad she was born a girl. If the child were born in a lion clan where even a girl could be the head of the family, it would have been a proud successor. Usually, successful transformations happen after the first molt, but Lindsay has 3 years to go until the first molt. Nevertheless, the fact that she succeeded in transformation meant that the possibilities for this child were endless. Arthur Renero was proud and ordered the Knights of the Bird Clan to search in the nearby forest immediately. Because she wouldn't have been able to fly far. At the age of 7. I apologize. I couldn't find the lady. All the knights who went to find Lindsay in the nearby forest returned empty-handed. Only then did Arthur Renero feel that something was wrong. There's no way she can fly far away. It had nothing to do with Lindsay's abilities or potential. Because it was a matter of basic growth rate. In addition, Lindsay was smaller than her other siblings. So the feathers must have grown later than the other siblings. But she's not in the forest? Did she go out into the forest and get kidnapped by others? No, at least in the land of this bird clan, there was no way a child with Renero's wheat-colored hair would be kidnapped. As Renero, the only member of the bird clan who could use this ability, was the object of envy and fear of the clan, like all other races that use this ability. So, where the hell did she disappear to? Just as Arthur Renero was confused by his missing daughter, a letter arrived from his subordinate. Lord, this is a letter from that child. Arthur Renero wondered and opened the sealed letter. I will deliver it to the master from Yeckhart's mansion. Kendrick Yeckhart returned to the Yeckhart mansion with Lady Lindsay. Lady Lindsay is. Arthur Renero, who read the letter, opened his eyes wide in disbelief. Lindsay is in Yeckhart? Just how? Judging by Lindsay's strong abilities, it wouldn't have happened. But send Lindsay to Yeckhart? Come to think of it, the time when Lindsay disappeared and the time when Kendrick Yeckhart left the mansion in a wagon perfectly coincided. She disappeared 2 days ago. It was also 2 days ago that Kendrick left. Arthur Renero's face distorted with anger when he thought about it. Kendrick must have kidnapped Lindsay. The reason Kendrick visited was also to threaten to give up Renero's daughter. Arthur Renero, who made his decision, tore up the letter and slammed the wooden desk with his fist. Call the temple right now. Why do my ears itch so much? As if someone was talking about me. I tried to pick my ears with wings. Ah, it's good. Fortunately, it fit my body size perfectly. On the bed, there were also small cotton blankets and pillows made by them. I put the pillow and pulled the blanket up to my head. Then suddenly, I was drowsy and sleepy. As I was closing my eyes in the rush of sleepiness, a familiar face suddenly popped into my mind. How's Adele doing? There was not a single thing that I regretted leaving behind in the mansion, but it was disappointing to leave Adele behind. I should tell Adele I'm going to run away. But if I had told her the truth about this plan, she would have held me back, calling it crazy. And if I had stayed in the mansion, like in my previous life, I was abandoned after the first molt, and Adele must have been killed too. No matter how much I thought about it, this side was the best for each other. Not for my father, though. Let's really sleep now. Did I see it wrong? And carefully inspected the feathers on the side of my stomach. All of them had fine wheat-colored hair, but one of them had a slight redness. What happened? Molting begins at the age of 10. It was the same for children of all races. I too, without exception, started my first molt when I was 10 years old in my previous life. But red feathers come out this fast? No matter how quickly I used this ability, the timing of the first molt couldn't change. I looked at my feathers in amazement. It was red no matter how many times I looked at it. It's only been a day since I came to Yekhart, and I already have cursed feathers. If I get caught, I might be abandoned. Yekhart's wolves seemed quite fond of me, but apart from that, it was difficult to spot already cursed feathers. At least after Arson was healed, and they owed me. I carefully bit a little fluff on the side of my stomach with my beak. Anne. With both eyes closed, she pulled the feather out with all her might. The red feathers were pulled out and rolled randomly on the window. The spot where the feathers were pulled throbbed. My tears welled up. I quickly threw my feathers out of the window and flew back to bed. It must be the wrong feather. There's no way the molting has already started. Of course. So this would be just a dream. It's just a bad dream. I tried to sleep with my eyes closed, shaking off the worst thoughts possible. It's weird. As Mr. Hearn said, I rested well for 3 days, but the transformation didn't happen. I'm still in bird form. In the wolf mansion crowded with wolves, the human form was more comfortable than the bird form. How much longer do I have to rest to get back to being human? I moved my body back and forth and kept looking at myself. It didn't seem like there was anything wrong. Of course, the human form is not particularly uncomfortable, but it was uncomfortable not to be able to communicate with the wolf clan. Then, the door burst open. It was Arson who opened the door. As soon as Arson came in, he turned his head and looked around. What? Why are you there? The window frame is dirty, you can't sit down there. You fool. What? I quickly lifted my foot to check the situation. The pink feet had a little bit of dust on them. It's not dirty. I raised my feet to show Arson, meaning it wasn't dirty. Chirp. What? It's not dirty. But hurry up and come down. I'm hungry. Is it already time to eat? I was able to sit down at Arson's table and receive the same table that Arson ate every time. Because Kendrick said it would be good for me and Arson to get to know each other quickly, so we had a meal together every day. Arson crumpled his face as soon as he saw the carrot in the soup. I told you to take out the carrot. I don't want carrots in it. Arson said. I'll make sure to take it out next time. Please try it today, young master. The maids were familiar with Arson. Arson's picky eater seems to be more than a day or two. I sat down and crunched on some celery as I watched Arson work hard to pick carrots. No, why don't you eat carrots? I quickly jumped in front of Arson. And I said, pushing down a plate of carrots that Arson had picked out. Chirp. Don't be picky. I can live with you only if you stay alive for a long time. Arson was born weak, and the fact that he was picky about what he ate made him die faster. You want me to eat carrots? Chirp. I don't want to. Chirp. Arson firmly pushed the carrot plate. It was a strong will, not like a 7-year-old child. I puffed up my feather and squinted at Arson. What? Why do you look at me like that? The maids watching our meal did not miss the right time and pushed the carrot plate in front of Arson. The lady asked you to do this, so you still won't eat it, young master? Oh my, look at how well my lady eats vegetables. I've never seen anyone eat this well. I was surprised at the compliments from the maids and ate another carrot. Then Arson stared at the carrot as if he had a desire to win. The carrot will get pierced. Should I stimulate it a little more? I deliberately turned to Arson and chewed the carrot as if to show off. Then Arson took a deep breath as if he had made a big decision. Then he picked up a carrot, put it in his mouth, and chewed it quickly. The maids and chefs of the mansion were watching the scene with their hands covering their mouths as if they were thrilled. Young master. He ate carrots. Cheers rang out in Arson's room. I looked at the scene awkwardly. How many times has he not eaten a carrot, and when he does, he has this kind of reaction? Arson ate all the carrots and looked at me triumphantly. Did you see that? I'm eating carrots now. You're not the only one who can eat it. Arson raised his chin. Really? What about tomato? I slipped a plate of tomato in front of Arson with one foot. The maids quickly noticed what I wanted. Oh my, even tomato? My lady is eating tomato, she must be a genius. Oh my, I wish young master could eat it, too. It would be nice if young master could eat it, too. Arson opened his eyes again at the word. Then he took a piece of tomato and thought about it seriously. The maids were looking at the figure holding their breath. And I laughed at Arson and ate the tomato. I sat on my small bed and started thinking about what I'm going to do once I get divorced. As far as I know, when people get divorced, they typically receive compensation payments. But if I end up marrying Arson, the wolves will have to pay a good amount to Renero's, probably because of the Hampton River. I can already picture Mr. Butler scolding Lord Kendrick. And I might not end up getting anything, so I think I need to save some emergency funds. For that, I need to look for a secure hiding place for my emergency supplies. There's no way I can hide it here, but I remember Betty once told me there are many empty rooms on the second floor of the mansion. I flew out of my room and went to the second floor, looking for an empty room where nobody goes. I'm sure I'll be able to find a place to hide my emergency fund. There are no good hiding spots here, should I go further in? Then I reached a huge door. Why is there the sound of conversation coming from that room? Is there a precious guest? I flew over out of curiosity and sat on the doorknob. Ah, it's cold. The metal handle was very cold to stand on. Because of this, I had to balance on the handle with one foot. It was Kendrick's voice. We are also in trouble. Renero has requested mediation, so we can't ignore it. Please attend N. Renero? I blinked slowly at the familiar name. Why is Renero here? While I was puzzled, the conversation continued. How many times have I told you I didn't bring her by force? She followed me of her own will. Of course, we believe you, but we can't ignore Renero's request to the temple. It's the temple? The Temple of Canute. The Temple of Canute had no interest in anything other than worshipping God and managing the 9 holy relics. They didn't even carelessly involve themselves in territorial disputes among the clans. The temple only stepped forward when there was a problem concerning God or when the safety of the holy relics was at risk. But did Renero really ask the temple for mediation? I swallowed hard and pressed my ear closer to the door. So, it seems like you have to return Renero's child. Without Renero's will, the temple can't even agree to a child marriage. I could clearly hear a strange voice from outside the door. Return, what? I mouthed the word return, rolling it around in my mind. So, it meant my father had asked the temple for mediation to get me back. No way. For a moment, memories from a past life flashed through my mind. After the red feathers, my father and brothers completely turned a blind eye to me. A terrifying series of neglect. Their eyes had shifted to the cursed object. As my foot slipped, I fell to the floor. At that moment, the heavy oak door opened. A cloud of smoke rose up and wrapped around me. Naturally, the field of vision rose, and instead of the feathers that were wrapped around my body, the hem of the dress was visible. The bird form is lifted. I blinked awkwardly and greeted Kendrick. Hello. Kendrick. Lindsay, your bird form, lifted. But, what are you doing here? Kendrick's brows crumpled in time. Ugh, I'm in trouble. I jumped out of my place and made a special excuse. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was just passing by Anne. Passing by? You probably won't pass this way, and where's your maid in charge? That's. My hands were caught in a cold sweat. I'm not going to make Betty and the other maids get in trouble for nothing, right? Ah, this is Renero's baby bird lady. A strange man approached me with a smile. He looked to be in his 30s and had a soft, gentle expression. He was wearing a white robe decorated with gold leaf studs. It's the priest. Instinctively, I stepped closer to Kendrick. Hello. After hearing that he was here to take me, I felt terrified. Is he going to drag me away right now? Just thinking about it made me want to run, so I grabbed onto Kendrick's skirt tightly. Kendrick placed his large, warm hand on my back. You don't need to say hello. You won't be seeing him again. So stop it, Etrin, Kendrick said with a chuckle. What are you talking about, Kendrick Nim? I'll be seeing you again soon, the man, Etrin, replied with a sly smile. Suddenly, Kendrick lifted me up into his arms. I'll visit the temple myself. So please leave now, Etrin. The child seemed startled. Etrin smiled and waved at me. Kendrick turned around while holding me, so I had no choice but to face Etrin. But I was still a little too scared to greet the person who came to take me. I slowly averted my eyes. Seeing that, Etrin looked a bit troubled and said, Lady, you seem very shy. But how did you get this far? Don't say nonsense. There, take the priest. He'll be back, Kendrick said, beckoning to a maid passing by. The maid walked over and bowed to Etrin. I'll escort you. This way, please. Well then, I'll be on my way. Goodbye, lady. Etrin walked off with the maid. Both I and Kendrick, who were left awkwardly, said nothing. It'd be less awkward if you told me something. It was uncomfortable to be held in Kendrick's arms when the bird form lifted, so I moved my body. It was Kendrick who broke the silence first. Did your bird form just lift? Yes? Yes. It's fine. I'll call Mr. Hearn. It'd be better to get a checkup and get some rest, baby. I'm sorry, Kendrick Nim. I didn't overhear it on purpose. The thought of Renero made me feel like my eyes would come out at any moment, but I held it in. I'd like to ask you how far you've heard a little bit. So how far? To the point where you have to send me back. Then you've heard everything, no? I just came and listened a little. Yes, I see. We'll talk later. You need to rest a little first. After Kendrick finished speaking, he strode forward. Perhaps because of his wide stride, Kendrick arrived in front of my room shortly after. Then the door burst open, and Betty came out with a surprised expression. She bowed her head when she saw Kendrick. Lord and lady. Where have you been? Huh? Your bird form has been lifted. She was in front of the drawing room. The child seemed startled, so give her a glass of warm water and call Mr. Hearn. Let her see the doctor. It will be uncomfortable, so change into pajamas. Betty opened her eyes round and looked at me when he said I fell. I smiled awkwardly and avoided her gaze. And wrapped my arms around Betty's neck. I felt a warm warmth. I'm glad that the bird form was lifted, miss. But, may I ask why you went to the drawing room? No, that's... I pondered for a while. I wanted to go out for a while, so I went out, and I got lost. I looked up at Betty with my mouth shut. Fortunately, she seemed to believe what I said. You're not familiar with the structure of the mansion yet. But you'll get used to it soon. Betty said sweetly. The door burst open. Who else is here? Betty and I looked back at the door open at the same time. Lindsay. Arson? The boy, who was striding into the room, made eye contact with me and gave a surprised expression. Correct the grammar mistakes. Your bird form lifted? Arson asked, looking embarrassed. I nodded. Yeah, it just did. He stumbled back a couple steps. Guess it had been a while, maybe I looked different to him. You can sit here, I said, patting the bed like I was being generous. At that, Arson rushed over and flopped onto it. Wait, your transformation's really gone? He asked, eyes wide. Somehow, yeah. It just lifted. So, you're not a bird anymore? He sat next to me, trying not to meet my eyes. I squinted at him. What? Why are you looking at me like that? No reason. Do you not like that I'm not a bird now? It's ugly. The bird form was better, he muttered, looking away. Then, we both turned to the door. A knock. "Hello, lady," Mr. Hearn greeted as he approached. As I jumped down, I staggered. "Ah, I'm going to fall." I shut my eyes, bracing for the impact, but nothing happened. Huh? I didn't fall? When I opened my eyes, Mr. Hearn was holding me. "Oh my, lady, be careful." "Thank you, Mr. Hearn," I said, but something felt off. My legs felt strange, like they weren't mine. I checked, no wounds. Still, it felt weird. Sitting on the bed, Mr. Hearn explained, "If you stay in bird form too long, it's hard to adjust back." Really? That was news to me. He smiled and patted my head. "You're fine, just don't overdo it." Overdo it? You're still unstable. But if you take it easy, you'll be okay. His words made me tear up. Seeing my face, he asked, "Is something wrong?" "It's just, I can't treat Arson." I glanced at Arson. What if he gets sick again? He'd been fine since I last treated him, but he wasn't fully cured. I lowered my head, feeling helpless. Then, "What now?" Arson suddenly said. "If that's the issue, don't treat me." Our eyes met. He looked flustered but quickly hid it. "If it's about me, don't worry. I don't mind being sick." That wasn't true. Arson hated being sick, and medicine. I reminded him. "That's true, but you always cry even with a tiny scratch." "But I'm used to it now," he said seriously. We all stared at him, surprised. Then he added, softly, "I just don't want you to get sick every time you treat me." "But I'm not sick," I replied. "Just turning into a bird again, that's all." "You said you liked my bird form, though," I teased, sitting beside him. Embarrassed, he blushed. "When did I?" "Just now." He jumped up. "Of course I like it. But, this is fine too." "I don't know." "Just don't worry, stupid." Then he ran out of the room. I stared after him, stunned. Mr. Hearn started laughing, quietly at first, then louder. "Ahaha. The young master really likes you," he said. Huh? For him to say that? He hates medicine more than anyone. Betty stepped closer as Mr. Hearn kept laughing, clearly amused. When did I fall asleep? It was bright when Betty, Mr. Hearn, and Arson were here, but now it's dark outside. I must have slept a long time. I don't usually sleep this much. I pulled up my cotton blanket. It was warm from my body heat. It's hot. I felt better after fanning my face. I opened the window a little. Much better. I sat on the window frame, thinking about the day. Betty told me not to push myself. Arson said he could endure the pain. And Hearn was always sincere and reassuring. They're all so kind. I smiled and took a deep breath, bringing my hands together to use my ability. Pale green light swirled like forest mist on my palm, but suddenly, they grew out of control, distorting violently. Startled, I stopped. What's happening? It's just like when I first awakened. No, it's even worse now. This is bad. Come in, I heard Kendrick's voice. I opened the large door carefully and peeked in. Lord Kendrick, may I come in? Lindsay, he asked, frowning slightly and pointing to the sofa. What are you doing up? Just come in and sit down. Yes, thank you. Well, actually, I have a request, and something to tell you. A request? I nodded eagerly. Yes, my ability is unstable. I clasped my hands and used my power. A soft green light filled the room, but it quickly lost shape and threatened to overwhelm me. How have you been controlling it until now? He asked. Look, Lindsay. Kendrick chuckled and raised a hand. A black marble floated above it. Yeckhart's ability, Shadow. I'd heard of it, but never seen it in person. The marble turned into a thin black thread at his command. This is how you control it, turn your ability into fine threads. But the problem is, the threads grew rapidly until they exploded and vanished. Your power is too strong. It overflows and resists control. Then what should I do? You need to relearn everything from the start, he said calmly. I heard this happens sometimes. I'll teach you again. You will personally? Of course. I wouldn't leave you to anyone else. He placed his large hand on my head. Is that all you wanted? Yes. Thank you. I smiled and bowed. Shall we talk now? Talk? I want to apologize first. The calm, lake-like wall of his gaze met mine. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Ah. I finally opened my mouth, feeling foolish. He was referring to the conversation I had overheard between him and the priest. If I had known, I wouldn't have brought him into the mansion. It's my fault. His voice was sincere. I shook my head quickly. And no, I overheard it secretly. It's not your fault, Kendrick Nim. I should have considered you might hear it. And, just so you know, I'm not sending you back, Lindsay. I promised I wouldn't let you go, so don't worry. And don't force yourself either. He knew I was worried about Arson's condition. Unlike what my father told me in my past life, Kendrick Yeckhart was kind. Yes, thank you, Lord Kendrick. But... As I hesitated, Kendrick narrowed his eyes. I nervously wiggled my fingers. I think things will get busy now. Because of the political marriage. To marry me to Arson, we need approval from the temple. But to propose to the temple, we need a majority vote from the council.